October 7, 1830. It was the most prosperous time I ever knew. The war was over, and the sight of my father coming back on horseback settled an indescribable emptiness. Soon my world seemed to be back to normal. Our mother showed her usual optimism. My two sisters went back to their joyful ways. The days where Dad and I worked together on our neighbors' cabins, days which I missed, returned. Our little Tennessee town seemed more than ready to enter winter. I couldn't have ever predicted what could happen on that cold December night. December 23, 1830. The darkness of that night seemed even more vivid as I explained it. The night air had the chill that causes the hairs on your back to stand up. Everything seemed strange, yet I took no notice after such a long day of work. I eagerly ran to bed, immediately pulling up the covers, and before long our whole family was sound asleep. The night wind howled outside, shaking our windows. That night snow furiously fell, as if eager to leave the dark clouds. It was one of the biggest blizzards my dad had ever seen. I don't remember what I dreamt that night, but it was definitely something comforting. Whatever it was, I was suddenly disturbed for a minute and awoke from a weak knocking by the door. The dying fireplace provided just enough light for me to slowly stagger myself to the curtained window. I thought it was strange that anybody would want us at such a late time. Maybe it was an emergency. To be safe, I carefully unveiled the curtain to have a look at our knocker. My heart skipped a beat. In front of our door lay an old, feeble man, barely able to stand in the pounding snow. As I looked closer, I realized he was a native, which caused many questions to form in my head. Before I had time to think, I spotted a whole line of natives on a white street. Against the harsh, cold and wind, they marched with seemingly no aim. Their eyes were devoid of brightness or light, and instead showed to be filled with pain and anguish. As I observed their line, I saw some that had barely enough clothes for the cold, while others seemed hardly able to stand. Some of them desperately clawed at the overcome doors around ours. After a while, none opened. On the corner of my eye, I suddenly spotted an old native woman, and with closer inspection saw that she had a small object wrapped in brown blankets. I saw her fearfully trying to wrap her whole body around the object, as if to shelter her against the cold. She awkwardly walked through the ice-filled street to her neighbor's cabin. With her remaining strength, she pounded at the door. When no answer came, she first clawed on the door, and after a while, slouched down in the snow in defeat. The old man was still at my door, motionless, and as I reached for the door, a hand grabbed my shoulder. Within a second, my dad's face was in front of me. "No," he said, with a firmness that made me not question back. "Get back to bed," he ordered. I did as he wished, walking back to my bed, while taking one last look outside. In the morning, the sun revealed what I had missed. My father, who was also the town's leader, and a group of other adults, was charged with gathering the bodies in a neat pile. They ordered everyone to stay in the cabin until the problem was solved. I didn't know what to think. My sisters and mother seemed just as perplexed, even more fearful than I was. Thinking I had special privileges since of my father's status, and the anger I felt last night, I ignored the rules and rushed outside. I wish I didn't. The old man from last night seemed exactly like I last saw him, frozen in time. What struck me was his face, an expression of utter sorrow that I can't explain and still can't today. When the adults came to gather the corpses, they saw the old man had both his hands around the handle of our door. The hands were completely frozen there. After minutes of trying to pull them off, and with no avail, Chester, our neighbor, used his shovel to break the fingers of the man. Just like that, the old man was carried off. After hours of searching to get bodies, I finally found the one I was looking for. The woman I saw was crouched to the ground, holding tightly the object around her bosom. As I opened the blankets, I couldn't hold back the tears any more. The baby seemed strangely peaceful around her mother, and yet still seemed distraught. Within that second, my dad came running to my side, yelling and questioning me what I was doing. I looked at him with a glance that I never did to anyone, a glance that stopped my father in his track. I don't remember how long that lasted with me, just looking at him in the snow. In the afternoon, a group of soldiers came to town to gather the pile of bodies into their carts. Rows of my neighbors and friends looked on as the soldiers drew each of the Indian corpses into the cart with little regard for decency. I asked one of the soldiers where the corpses would go. A Union soldier looked at me and softly replied, "A proper place to rest." I barely talked to my father or anyone in general after that day. June 14, 1840. When I turned 19, I left for Texas for more job opportunities. In a few weeks, I found work at a small farm in Charleston, eventually settling there for the time being. While I escaped from the place of that horrible event, I could never escape what happened. I tried to forget everything that happened that day, but no amount of words can erase them. They were permanently engraved in my childhood, forever haunting me till my final breath. October 6, 1848. After 8 years at Charleston and numerous letters pleading me to visit home, I finally gave in. That October day I finally arrived on horseback at the small town, and yet I couldn't help but feel the hairs on my back stand up. There was something out of touch with the town, almost like a strange chill in the air. The winter cold seemed oddly strange. When I did arrive, I noticed something immediately. There were less people. One store had barely 3 people in it, while the sound of children was completely gone. After I arrived at my cabin and eagerly went in to escape the frigid cold, my family seemed shocked. Numerous hugs, kisses, and questions on my work were soon exchanged, and my anxiety on arriving home was soon gone. My sisters seemed more elevated than ever. My mom started cooking, asking me if I was starving. When I asked where my father was, they told me that he was out, talking with the town council. That statement reminded what I had found troubling along the way to my house. I told them that there seemed to be less people here. They looked at me with a blank stare, and after a while, uncomfortable silence, said that apparently no one had borne any children for a long time. They explained to me that no woman gave birth since years ago, and many people around town thought that God was punishing them for their sins and lifestyle. My sister said that the whole town had started to assemble during the afternoon every day to pray and beg for forgiveness. She explained her fears of moving out of town, in part due to many of the eldest members of town dying and with no one to replace them. When I arrived at Charleston Mail Station, I found a letter by my sister. The letters on the envelope seemed oddly rushed, even though I knew she had perfect handwriting. As I started to read the letter, my hands started to tremble. My sister had stressed that someone had murdered Chester. They found him beside his cabin door, holding the handle. What scared my sister the most was his face, an expression that she said was too horrible for her to describe. What hit me the most was that Sherman, Chester's wife, was immediately arrested and was awaiting trial. Me and my dad had built her fence for her when I was little. October 6, 1850. Not 2 days after that letter, I got another one. My darkest fears were soon reality. My sister said that Sharon had been trialed and waiting execution. The town council had judged her not only for the murder of Chester, but also for the other horrible things in the town, as a sign from God. They accused her of a mountain list of sins, including cheating and black magic. I didn't even know what to think as I read it, but as I read the bottom part, I knew it was dead serious. Apparently, the bad things that were happening was that last winter there was a terrible famine. Dog carcasses have been found in the morning, mutilated beyond recognition. Doors have been in the morning to be opened. My sister said that people were too afraid to go outside anymore. October 9, 1854. During lunch, I went to the mail station to check on the mail, and to my surprise, I found a letter by my sister, and thought it odd that she was to be writing so late in the year. When I did open it, I quickly recognized her handwriting was in an extreme frantic mood. She said that an immediate danger was right this minute in town, and that she had no time to explain now. She strongly suggested that I came back home as soon as possible. Her signature in the end was barely legible. October 19, 1854. It shocked me. There was nobody there. Nobody was around. Every cabin, every store, every building empty. I yelled for anybody to answer, but there was no one. I quickly rushed to my cabin, knowing that I'll see my family. The door was open, but there was nobody there. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I could only just look at the empty room in a state of utter shock. I started to flip tables, chairs, anything, hoping that they would be down there, hiding. After hours of denying the truth, I slouched down on the ground and slowly covered my face. I tried asking myself what could have happened. Maybe they had moved, like they were planning on doing. Maybe I cut myself off. At that moment, I felt a strange presence, and I carefully walked outside. There I saw it. A little native girl was looking at me, far off in the woods. She didn't say anything or move, but just looked. Then she vanished into the woods, as mysteriously as she came. Within seconds I was off, dashing into the dark woods in the cold night, looking for the girl, looking for answers. After seemingly hours of running, I started to a stop. The girl was next to a tree. She looked at me and then to the ground below her. I tried to look at what she was staring at, and when I tried to look up to ask a question, she was gone. The girl was gone, along with the answers I needed. I scoured the ground that she was standing, looking for any meanings. Then I saw it. A rusted, dirty shovel was hidden under all the leaves. A strange presence seemed to tell me what to do. I began to dig through the hard October ground, one by one, inch by inch. The ground resisted for every bit of its strength, but I ultimately prevailed. After hours of digging, my hands were drenched in dirt, and the aim seemed to go pointless. What was there to find? A clank. I hit something. Shoveling through the thin dirt crust, I found what I was looking for. I knew it from the start. After further digging, I finally knew what had happened. A pile of skeletons had been piled together in a hole. In the midst of the pile, I found a worn-out blanket with little bones in it.